If you were a dish,
I'm a dumpling.
Kishwar Chowdhury,
acclaimed chef, author, and MasterChef finalist.
Celebrated for bringing Bangladeshi cuisine to the global stage.
and using her platform to raise awareness about global hunger.
on MasterChef, there was a moment.
I hope this is not when I cut my hand.
It was when you cut your hand. Yes. After you cut your hand, you were so calm and focused. Where did you get that from?
I just put a cleaver through my nail. When you think your body's going to give up, your mind does get trained to do things that you think that you cannot do.
Is it true that there's enough food being produced globally to eradicate hunger?
Yes, 1 in 9 children go to bed hungry. Right now, the number of children who are malnutrition is at its highest peak than ever before. We have the science, we have the technology, we have the agriculture, we have the ability and the resources to feed the entire world's population. It shouldn't be happening in 2024.
Since MasterChef, what are some of the costs that came with it?
The cost was...
Hi guys, quick one. A small favor I want to ask, if you're enjoying the episode that you're currently watching, is to subscribe to this YouTube channel. It goes a long way in supporting our vision of the podcast, where we want to go, the guests we want to talk to, and your simple gesture of clicking subscribe is the biggest favor you can do for us. So if you could do that right now, that would be awesome. Thank you so much, and back to the episode.
Kishwar,
Louie.
what do I need to know about your childhood upbringing, your early context, for me to really understand the woman that's sitting in front of me today?
I think the few formative things about my childhood was I describe it as a model minority. I feel like my parents really fit that bill. They came out here in the late 60s, early 70s, and they were students themselves, and then sort of met, got married, they studied, worked jobs, went to university, and then just like a lot of migrants back in the day, they just like kept their heads down, tunnel vision to change, I don't want to say change their circumstances, but just worked super duper hard and invested everything back into the children, built a community. So yeah, I think a very formative part of who I am is growing up in the 80s and 90s in Australia, surrounded by this community who becomes your family, and you hold on to your traditions, your culture, your food, the arts, the language. While you're growing up eating meat pies and sort of sausage rolls at your school canteen, and so it's like this very Australian upbringing, a nostalgic Australian upbringing with this very sort of bubble culture of being a Bengali Australian.
Yeah. I feel like I can relate to that because my parents were migrants too, and you almost feel like who am I? Because at home in your culture, you're one thing, and I spoke Mandarin with my parents at home, and then at school, English, and like you said, meat pies at the canteen. There was like that balance, right? Did you struggle a bit with that?
I would say like you learn to compartmentalize a lot, where the things that to me were so delicious, like I would actually look forward to Friday for a lunch order because they just had the best lasagna at my school canteen. And I think for a lot of people that was disgusting. Like, why would you eat this lasagna? And I'm like, I look forward to Fridays. Whereas they would come into our house and they just want to eat everything that my parents cooked. And I was like, this is so basic. Yeah. So I think you don't have an appreciation for what you have at home, and you sort of idolize or love what's outside your house. And yeah, there's definitely that having your feet in two boats for a really, really long time. And I know that lots of people are good at consolidating that identity when they're younger. Some people sort of go through their whole life without ever feeling like those two sort of facets of their life meet. And mine happened on a very, very public platform. Mine happened sort of right at the top end when I was filming for MasterChef. I went, oh my God, like my Bengali identity and my Australian identity sort of came together as one. And I had like this very public realization of who I was, like just culturally, but just as a person. And I wasn't expecting that to happen, sort of like broadcast to the world.
Yeah, so that whole thing like wasn't scripted, wasn't planned ahead of time. Like it was.
I
just,
did not think at the age that I was at that A, I was going to be on a reality TV show, but B, just have this epiphany about my life. And it was a really emotional coming out.
Yeah.
So forget about being scripted. I didn't think that that was possible. I was so assured of myself as a person going into this, but really finding myself through food was this incredible gift that I received on the back end of MasterChef, aside from everything else.
And did you, I guess I've heard in interviews before and on MasterChef you mentioning that growing up you would watch mum and grandma cook, and that's where you learned a lot of the cooking. Was being a chef or cooking like the main career for you, thinking, was that the plan?
No,
like, what was the plan?
I say this, like, I did not think that, even applying for MasterChef, I did not think at the end of it I would have this like hunger and drive to become a chef. But that goal, I think somewhere it must have happened in the top 8 or top 6. It was a calling for me. It's like the universe was pulling me to do this. I was just so infatuated with this, with food, but the context and the science behind it and how it's done, the production of it. I became obsessed, and it comes with a lot of sacrifices. It comes with a lot of beginning at the start. I think when I left MasterChef, I asked for a placement under Chef Yomoda at Ishizuka, and he's a Michelin star chef coming off this platform, and a lot of people go on to, I guess, do a lot of brand collabs or make a little bit of money. Do a lot of brand collabs or make a little bit of money. I went, no, I just want to strip down and get down into the basement and get into a tunnel and be in Ishizuka and train under this Michelin star chef. I really wanted to do that. So I was taking trains out at midnight, sort of, to be there taking these long shifts, and it was an unpaid role. And my heart was so full. It's the only place I wanted to be. And mind you, at this time, I've already had a full career. I already have a full life. I have 2 children. But it's like I wanted to completely dive into this world. And I'm so lucky that I had the support and network at home to be able to do this and pursue this.
Your previous life before MasterChef and cooking, you were a lecturer at the university.
No, I wasn't a lecturer. I taught at Monash, I was like a tutor.
Okay.
Yeah, a teaching assistant.
In business.
Yes.
In business, that was like your proper job, your proper career, your normal life.
Yeah.
Did any of that make you feel as alive as your life after MasterChef?
I have to say, I'll always say this. I had a really good life leading up to MasterChef. I think every step I took, like a lot of people I think there's always this narrative like this changed my life or that changed my life. I wasn't waiting for something to change my life. I think everything that I've done and all the different adventures I've been on, or different facets of my life, whether it's been, I don't know, being part of a team sport or a business or moving overseas or teaching at Monash Uni, I think all of it I've met with the same amount of, bewilderment, adventure, excitement, and passion. And I think that makes for a really whole, complete life. Otherwise, MasterChef wasn't on the cards. So yes, becoming a chef was fantastic. Doing the work I do now, jumping, sort of being in another country or another city, they're all sort of like these massive bucket list things that I couldn't have even written this list for myself. And I go, wow, that also just happened. So it's tick, tick, tick. But I was doing, that was happening in my life, or at least I was feeling that way before MasterChef happened anyway.
Great. And not many people know this, but you were in Germany, running your own business.
Yes.
What was that about?
So I studied in Germany. I sort of grew up in the southeastern suburbs. I went to PLC, went on to Monash University. So I feel like that's a really sort of like in the box square trajectory for
like my life, yeah.
for Asian growing up in Melbourne. Is that fair to say? Yeah, a little bit boring and
Literally
square.
what happened to me.
Yeah. So post Monash, I moved to London, which is also, I feel like, a Australian rite of passage to go do a couple of years in the UK. And then I studied a very, very niche course. So my family business was in printing and packaging, but we used to trade machinery. And I met my husband, who's like a third generation printer packager.
Okay.
Yeah, so their family they're overseas.
Trust me, in London?
No, they're in Bangladesh.
Okay.
And then they sort of came to Australia to buy printing machinery from my father. And so with the machinery came this, it wasn't even a marriage proposal. It was just like, I met my future husband.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, wow, we look the same, we sound the same, and we have the same nerdy interests. So it just seemed very destined. But then we went and studied something extremely niche, and there's only two places in the world that you can study it. One is in Rochester, just outside New York, and one is the London School of Printing and the Print Media Academy in Heidelberg in Germany. So we took that leap of faith and we just moved over there, and that's what we did. We became completely immersed in that printing packaging world. And then from there, that was the time when the global financial crisis was just on the brink. It was that 2007-8 period. And we had like really, really hard decisions to make. Our plan was to come back and acquire a printing press that we had in Sydney and run that. But printing was shutting down, and general manufacturing was shutting down all over Australia, as it was over UK and Europe at the time as well. And we just sort of like took a really early look at that, and we said, do we want to be part of this sort of industry and take up a business that's sinking? And this is not what we studied for. This is not what we invested ourselves in. And we took this massive, massive gamble. And I moved over to Bangladesh and I opened up my own factory.
Okay.
Yeah, so that started in 2010. So it was a massive leap from being born and brought up here and then living in London and Germany and saying, hey, this is the best thing that we can do with our expertise and knowledge. And it was really also just to take, all the knowledge, support, and everything that we had attained in Australia, London, and Germany, and take that over to a developing country at that time and be leaders in our industry. So it was about lean management. It was about more green solutions. Even we were one of the first factories that put solar panels all over our roof because the sunlight, the catchment hours in a country like Bangladesh is so long. We actually put energy back onto the grid.
Wow.
After running a factory, and then there's electricity shortages, so we run our own geysers, and our factories were built with their own little power plants as well. So we were taking everything that we had learnt to put into, I guess, a country that wasn't ready for it, but we wanted to sort of be the technological leaders in that sphere.
Yeah, and did that work out the way you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, again, like with any business, you sort of take a call and you sort of have to predict the future of where this is going in Australia versus where this was going, because we had that support system from my husband's family and their knowledge and know-how in Bangladesh. And it really did, and it sort of just grew from there. I think there was a few tough years because we had really heavily invested in equipment and machinery that was before its time.
Yeah.
So if just to get a little bit deeper into the world of printing and packaging, so we were sort of looking at like somewhere between 6 and 8 color machinery with that sort of had like your finishing units like coders, and these are very, very expensive industrial machinery, and we'd built out a very expensive factory. And then everyone else was operating with 2 and 4 color machines, and not machines that are like you're sort of, it's like investing in equipment and machinery that's not required, like the market didn't demand for it, or there was no taste for it.
And where was the market? Was it local to Bangladesh or
it was
quite
local,
international?
and then so a lot of the jobs that we took up was in America and Europe.
Okay.
So we do printing and publishing for the UN family, so a lot of the materials and books for UN Denmark as well, WHO. We've done a lot of campaigns with UNICEF, but packaging for like Nestle, BAT, so we do a lot of food packaging as well, and then pharmaceutical packaging and cosmetics. So what happened subsequently was there was this period where my husband and I, we had to develop a taste for what we had. We had to sort of like go, this is what you can do. You don't just have to print something, but you can print this many runs in this short amount of time. You can customize things. You can not only look at something that's printed, but you can scratch it and smell it and make it tactile and have these different varnishes and finishes. And like, we were like sort of really tantalizing the big sort of marketing firms and big customers that had the budgets.
That was ahead of its time
because it wasn't.
Then it wasn't. Yeah,
it just wasn't happening. And they're like, we have this printing factory in the middle of Bangladesh that can do incredible things, and people just want sort of like very basic marketing stuff because they're like, people are buying our stuff anyway. Why do we need to go and spend more money on packaging? And we were really thinking ahead of our time. Now that's it. Like it was the market has grown and it's changed. And so what I did subsequently was create a little design firm off the back of that. So we were then integrating backwards and going, here is what is possible. Like just let your imagination free. Like it was. So that there was no restrictions. I was hosting workshops as well, where we were getting people from like Ogilvy and these other big marketing firms come in, and it was like, you don't like, there are no constraints to designs, but if you're designing to print, this is that bridge between what designers and marketers and graphic designers have, between what they think that's going to happen and the actual outcome. So when you go, so I was hosting these workshops where if they know how to get the end result, then they can go and be creative. So that was that bridge and integration into using the full potential of the investment that we had made in the machinery and the factory that we had put up.
I can't help but notice that there is a parallel. In the printing business, you were educating almost people of something that they did not realize they needed, right? I mean, for me right now, packaging is so important. You know, how it packages a product really shows how much respect the company has for its product. But back then you were educating people of that and running workshops and things like that. And it's almost like the same with food and Bengali culture, because most people don't understand, we're not exposed to it. But here you are on MasterChef showing us all the amazing stuff that I was watching TV during COVID. I was like, man, like, I want to try that. That looks really good, you know. There's this real parallel. And it leads me to this super random question. I've never asked anyone this before. But if you were like a dish, and, you know, on MasterChef, you want things to like be slightly complex. You have multiple elements. What is Kishwar as a dish? Like, what's in it? What's in Kishwar as a dish?
I think the dish that, well, there's two dishes that are probably on two different extremes that really, really define me. Like if you go, what's your signature dish? But I'll tell you who I am as a dish at the end of this sentence.
What's the ingredients?
I think the first dish, like the dish that I won an apron for or sort of came into was it was sardines with a green mango and ginger broth, and it was just this very complex dish. It was at the heart of it, it was quite a peasant dish, but there was something about it that was quite modern and spoke to the produce in Australia. And it was really about the Port Phillip Bay sardines and the sustainability in fishing. And then even the lentils that we were using, it was about Victorian produce, but with this tie back to my cultural identity as well. So I think there was something very complex about that, but still somehow it worked. And that to me was a dish that I felt like if I didn't use any words, I think people would be able to tell who I am by that plate of food. And then the final dish that I made, which was the very last dish I served, again had sardines on it, but it was called banta bhat, or what I called it is smoked rice water. And it just uses smoke, rice and water. That's all there is. There's no hiding behind that. And the dish itself is banta bhat itself was born from a really, really sad time in Bengal's history. It was the Bengal famine. And it really talks about, I guess, this is a little bit deeper than I've ever spoken about before, but it really does talk about like geopolitical sort of displacement and what a lot of people in that area have faced through colonization. And there is a sad history to that dish.
Yes.
It is also about survival. It is also about making food still taste good with scarcity, and it is so complex and interesting. And a lot of people, I've got that sort of like sort of made a lot of headlines when I made that dish. People thought I was a little bit crazy and daring, and it's the question I get asked most, like what led you to make banta bhat as your finale dish? Like, it takes balls. I keep hearing this, like that was a ballsy move.
I have no context, like why are people saying that?
I'll tell you how to make the dish, and
Okay.
so this will give you context. It's rice, you take rice, so I made rice on a pot, and then the rice is then steeped in cold water.
Okay.
And then you take something that's smoky, so chilies usually, and you set that on fire, and then you steep that into the rice. So what actually happens is you're capturing the rice, and the water itself actually sort of takes up that smoky flavor. So when you eat it, and it's usually fermented overnight, but I did like sort of managed to find a way to do that so it tastes like the dish is meant to taste. But that's what it is. It's just like the element of smoke. It's just literally boiled rice and water. And so people were like, what? Wow. What is happening here?
Yeah.
I ended up getting 3 10s at a finale for presenting that dish because it is a very, very complex dish. And there's a lot more science behind it than just the history of this being an emotionally sentimental sort of dish. It's just the idea that someone like Heston Blumenthal has tried for years to capture the essence of smoke in water, and then chefs like Scott Pickett, who sort of cook on fire and like have restaurants on smoke, they serve like a smoked water. And you have these very Eurocentric chefs who can put like a $50 or $60 smoked water on their menu. And my culture has had this in their sort of like, my culture has had the ability to do this for years. Just like naturally. So I think it's also pushing that notion of who has these platforms, who has these voices, what are the stories that we're hearing and telling, and what is considered fine dining and culturally sophisticated, because it's not usually these ethnic cultures.
You think about French cooking and all that. Wow.
But if you ask me to describe who I am in a dish, I'm a dumpling. I'm just a straight out, like a good, like momo or a chicken and prawn dumpling or a gyoza.
Why dumpling?
Because it's just comfort food. I think I'm unpretentious, not complicated. You want to just like, I think it just hits the spot and it's easy and it's my go-to dish as well. Keeping that metaphor then, if you're a dumpling today, have you refined this dumpling over the years? As in, have you perhaps put in new ingredients or taken out certain ingredients over the years of your traveling and business and MasterChef until today? Dumpling's something that I love to just do more at home, and then I go and seek out. Like, I think a bowl of ramen and dumpling, like there's this endless pursuit of the perfect noodle and the perfect dumpling. Like, it's just something that I will never tire of. I think it extends over so many different continents and so many different cultures, like both of those things, like noodles, pasta, and dumplings. And I don't think I've ever met a dumpling or a bowl of soup noodles that I've said no to. So I know what my favorites are, and like obviously it's about the dough and then the filling and then the chew. But like, I'm really happy to eat dumplings or noodles anywhere in any continent, in any country, on a plane, anywhere.
Awesome. Now, shows like MasterChef, they tend to amplify the contestants. They do tell a lot about the backstory. They give people an insight into your personal lives as well. And like you say, a lot of people, when they come out, they have this, newfound fame. They do brand collaborations with their voice, a new platform. You went down a slightly different path. You went down into the, food, but also advocacy. You're very passionate about many things. What are some things that you want to highlight through your fame of MasterChef?
I think love it, absolutely, I love food and I love being surrounded by food and I'm just obsessed with it. I think I dream about it. But with that, what I didn't expect as well was there's this complete other side to it, which is there's the fine dining and then there's the scarcity. And you're always really torn between these two ends of the spectrum. And I think it's just, I'm in a really, really lucky place where I get to sort of, I get to be a part of and I get to put on these really, really fine dining black tie gala dinners or be a chef in these very coveted spaces and have residencies where it is about opulence and luxury ingredients, but people are coming in and spending a lot of money. And then on the other side of that is working with the ASRC, which is the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre right here in Melbourne. And this is not the work I'm doing overseas, right here in Melbourne, just the number of families that rely on their food bank. And that number has just grown over the last couple of years with the cost of living crisis. And this is happening in our very own city. And we are a lucky country and we are a lucky city. And we're a foodie city. But so many people are going without. And then the work I do with the World Food Programme and just looking at food logistics, but innovation and technology and how just, I guess, contributing to innovation around food and logistics and how food is distributed and who has access to food and who has access to nutrition, even working with the World Bank and IFC. These are really, really, they're not just interesting conversations. I think it's very integral for me to know this and expose myself to this, but this newfound platform that I found is to share that part of the food industry and share that part of the cycle of life and the cycle of food. Here are people who have everything, and this is like the most luxurious facet of food, and here are people who have access to nothing. So yes, I've been so lucky to be here, and I think that has driven me to use my platform to talk about what happens here.
I don't have any questions about this, but I totally want to talk about this. Okay, so tell us, is it true that there's enough food being produced globally to eradicate hunger?
Yes, absolutely.
So the issue then is distribution and logistics.
It's absolutely. It's again, there are a lot of geographical and political factors at play in terms of who gets to access food. It's not that there are, these charities have existed before, way before we've ever existed. I think it's food. No one needs to go to sleep hungry.
Yeah.
So 1 in 9 children go to bed hungry. I think right now the number of children who are malnutrition is at its highest peak than ever before, and they're usually caused by, like I said, political factors, geographical factors affecting borders, and then of course there's natural disasters and floods and fires and things like that, and environmental and global warming factors. But the biggest factor is also just war and man-made factors. So yes, we produce enough food to feed the entire world, but the amount of food that we waste is huge. So Stop the Waste campaign is a campaign I work with the UN World Food Programme. And a big part of it is how we look at wastage in our household. One is to not waste food, but the second is not to buy so much food to begin with. So solutions include things like just meal planning and knowing what you're going to eat for the week, and obviously commercial restaurants and supermarkets, everything contributes to this wastage.
Last season, when I was talking to my friend Daniel Flynn, who's the founder of Thank You, we were talking about ending extreme poverty, right? And he's saying over the past however many decades, as a society, we're actually making meaningful progress in ending extreme poverty. Are we making progress here when it comes to hunger and nutrition?
I think every generation does make progress when it comes to hunger and nutrition. I think something else that changes is science changes.
Yeah.
The science behind it changes in terms of what we consider is the base level of nutrition. Like all of the factors that we use in terms of measures of this comes from like this base scientific measure of this is enough nutrients for someone to be considered not hungry, or this is this metric measure of what we consider for someone to not be poor. So I think before, what we would think is extreme poverty is maybe like a visual measure is amount. Like if someone is barefoot or doesn't wear clothes.
Yeah. Now so there's an actual number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of I can't remember exactly what it was, but like a survival off below a certain amount a day. So there's actually a set number there.
So are we making progress in our generation? I think the answer is yes and no. I think it's always sort of like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And so right now there are more people sort of facing on the brink of, brink on famine in some parts of the world due to all of these factors than ever before. And it shouldn't happen in 2024. That's the main thing. We have the science, we have the technology, we have the agriculture, we have the ability and the resources to feed the entire world's population. It shouldn't be happening in 2024.
Yeah. Does big food companies have anything to do with that, like profit?
It's like, look at me stepping on sort of like eggshells. And the answer is yes, of course they do. I think we produce too much, we overproduce, we exhaust farmers, we exhaust resources into making these supermarket sort of perfect goods. And on the other side, there is a wastage of a lot of produce and product. It puts strains on farmers, it puts strains on, people who don't have access to that. But yes, there are a lot of organizations who go in and rescue food. So there is these food rescue teams who give, so who will use things that are being thrown out, or even not that, just getting food before they go past their use-by date and redistributing that. But that also requires resources. So yes, absolutely, we are overproducing food and we are really exhausting a lot of resources doing that. But like I said, this whole problem is not the food that we're producing, it's really about distribution. And food distribution and inequality in food distribution is really ridiculous and stoppable and amendable problem if politically we choose to do so.
This reminds me of Ryan's dad, actually, who's the CEO of many things, but Empower Australia, which is it's like a food banky sort of a thing in South Bank, and every Sunday they open doors, and it's like a really nice pantry. You should come check it out if you're free.
Should.
It's like a really nice pantry where people would walk through and they're not given out food. They select what they want, and they go through that process with dignity. But what's extremely surprising is just the demand, like the length of lines. And we're in the middle of a major city, but every Sunday, like lines go around the corner, wraps around the streets, and everyone's, there's such a big need, and the food is there. It's a distribution problem. And
absolutely. And everyone who's standing in that line, mind you, doesn't want to be standing there.
Yes.
That's not what they want to be doing on Sunday, and that's not what they should be doing on Sunday.
That's right.
It's like, it's just, like you said, being in this position, it's about restoring your dignity. There are circumstances for why people end up having to rely on food banks or soup kitchens or anything that is sort of a place of giving. No one really wants to be on the receiving end of charity. It's just circumstantial that happens. And as a city and let's look broadly as as a citizen of the world, there is such a huge ability to stop that in every single city and like, I guess, have those conversations about food wastage.
Yeah, and nutrition, especially for kids, that's like a human right.
Yeah. So that's why you were asking, is this generation doing better? This generation, I think, like I said, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't know if we're eating better than the generation before us.
We're not.
I think we've just become better at producing fast food and food
better at
that
calories.
is so synthesized. So when you were asking about calories, it's like, yeah, it's such a technical thing where you can meet calories by pumping yourself up with, I mean, honestly, even tablets these days, but protein blocks. And I mean, these are all really technical things when it comes to, are you malnutritioned? And that's an extreme edge to be living on anyway. There was a whole time when we were looking at sort of like South Asia and what they did with encouraging women not to breastfeed their children, but to put them onto milk supplements because they believed that by having these milk supplements like milk formula, that is the better way forward, and that's actually giving you more calories rather than breast milk. But if you look at reports now, that's why I say the science on this keeps changing.
Yes.
If you look at reports now, the adverse effect of a whole generation of women not breastfeeding their children and relying on this, not through choice or not through the idea of, some of it is for health reasons, some of them is for having the choice to do so. I mean, like actually being pushed to put your children onto sort of powdered milk supplements versus breastfeeding, which was the norm in those areas. And we're talking about rural villages and a fairly uneducated population in terms of accessing information about this, has actually had worse adverse effects on those children who are now adults. Yeah. So in terms of what we do and how the science changes and what we call being malnutritioned and giving someone a protein block versus giving them access to fresh food, vegetables, actual real food that is, like agricultural food, is a whole different story.
I can't help but feel quite cynical about all of this because, okay, so you got one end of the spectrum where you have kids.
You go hungry and you die.
Yeah.
Yep.
Terrible. And then you have Western society, and not everyone's doing fine dining every day. You have Western society where these massive food companies are producing stuff that's full of like calories, yes, but not nutrition.
Yeah.
And we're
empty calories.
Yes, that's right. And we're malnourished, even though we have ample supplies of food and we're not going hungry.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, both ends.
Yeah.
You can't
You're right.
win.
We're not going hungry, but are we more mindful in this generation about what we're eating? I think like the thing about what I feel now is that connection to food and family, and just we're the generation that switched off.
Yeah.
We sort of just mentally switched off somewhere, and that's the danger of this. Like if we don't connect through things that are very tactile, like going to the markets, picking up your produce, going to your local, and I don't mean supermarket, I mean like going to your local grocer, going to, pick up your fruit and veg or proteins for the week, and then having that very tactile experience of meal planning and cooking rather than also just outsourcing. So and having at least 1 or 2 days or 3 days in a week where you're having that experience of cooking as opposed to completely outsourcing that part of your life. I think it's just become very easy. And I'm not talking about Uber Eats and what restaurants do and eating out. I mean like even your day-to-day cooking and eating for survival, like your very basic home meals seem to be something that is easily outsourced. And with technology and all the apps and all the platforms that are available, it's just easier to do that. And then also the number of hours that we're committed to work and life outside the kitchen. It just seems like that's the last place that a lot of people want to be. But it's such a big part of, the biochemistry of who we are. Yeah.
Although, okay, the optimist is coming back. I am thinking shows like MasterChef, it does help highlight the attractiveness of cooking and home cooking, doesn't it? Like, because I watch it, I'm like, I wonder if I can make that. You know?
And in wondering if you can make that, have you given any of the recipes a go?
No. I just
But
use them for
mentally-
inspiration.
So you're watching MasterChef like I'm watching, I don't know, or binge watching things on Netflix where people are
this.
cheerleading or
Sure.
athletes, where I'm like, I wonder
can
if
do
I
that.
could do a star jump. The answer is no. So, but you're encouraged to?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, well, here's a story. I didn't cook when I got married.
Okay.
I thought my wife did the cooking, I'll do the dishes.
Yeah.
Okay. I can help you prep, but I'll
Yeah.
stick in my lane, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to mess that up. And then one year for Valentine's Day, she said, hey, where are you taking me out? I said, oh, look, I mean, got this restaurant, this restaurant. I said, no, I want you to cook.
Oh.
I went, really? She said, yeah, I want you to cook. I'm like, oh, I'm stuffed because I don't know, I don't know how to do this. So, I started researching a few simple recipes online, went to the market, bought a whole heap of stuff. I didn't know what to do with it. And then we have a...
What did you buy?
I did a 7-course.
Well,
thing, by the
you
way. So it was a lot.
reached really hard.
It was a lot, yeah.
You went from no cooking to 7 courses.
You know what? The moment you start preparing, because it was like this mental block, the moment you start preparing, your creative juices start flowing. And I just went, oh, but what if I did this? And what if I did that? And so it was high risk, high reward strategy. Okay.
I love that. Yeah, that's the equivalent of me going to a gymnasium and deciding I can do a double vault backflip something.
I'm just going to give it a go.
I think I can do this.
That's the confidence I had.
I love that.
Thanks to shows like MasterChef, makes things look easier than they probably are. So we have an induction cooking cooktop. I didn't know how to use it. So she was at work. I called her. I was like, so how does this work?
Where's the fire?
Does it just heat up? Will I burn my hand? How does?
Yeah.
Anyways, needless to say, I thought I did a really good job.
Did you do a good job?
I think so. As a first time,
Okay.
within context.
Yeah.
I think presentation-wise, I think I would have got some good marks just because I it doesn't really require
Was it
cooking
good for
skills.
the gram?
Yes. She loved it.
Okay.
Whole series of Insta stories. She was showing her friends.
Incredible. And it looked good on the plate.
I think so. I'll show you
There
after
you go.
this.
No,
You can,
I
you
really
can give
wanna
me
see it.
give me a number.
You know what? She's the only one who's tasted it, and if she's loyal to you, she will tell the world that it was fantastic.
That's right.
So
Look,
no one will ever know.
I thought it wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad.
But something that I did we met when you were there at my TED Talk,
Yes.
and it was so lovely to meet you there. But I always say, learn to cook or teach someone to cook.
Yeah.
So I think a big part of, I don't want to say a solution, but if there's that message of how does every single household change this and how do we get back to basics, it is about cooking. Cooking plays a huge role in the family. I'm so glad you did this. I joke with you and I'm but it's so important to have that. I think it really grounds a household. And I think there was also something else that I was listening to on radio years and years and years ago. I think it was either the Victorian or federal government that was rolling out campaigns about eating together a few times a week. I think, do you remember those ads?
No.
There was this series of ads that were that they were rolling out, and it was about sharing a family meal together.
Wow.
And I think if your government is investing time, energy and money into telling you to sit down as a family and eat, what does that say about the studies around this, but how the society is moving away from that? And I know you were asking at the very beginning, what's a very formative part of who I am? Yeah, it was conversations on the dinner table. It was the fact that I didn't have devices. We didn't have devices. Not answer the landline when someone called during dinner time, and just have a check-in. But that home-cooked meal, I think that intrinsically becomes a big part of who you are. And as much as I ran away from that as a young adult, because I was like, yep, perfect, I'm never eating rice and curry again. I live in London, I take a train to France, and I fell in love with making handmade pastas and French desserts, and I just loved doing that for a little while, somewhere down the line you come back and you'll know this. When you have your own children, a part of you wants to recreate a little piece of nostalgia or pass down something that you would have experienced with your own family.
Yeah.
And food is this really invisible, non-verbal way of doing that. It really has this magical, transformative sort of way of communicating who you are to your children and the next generation and your loved ones.
Yeah, I love that. Since MasterChef and you've gained the platform of having influence and having the ability to advocate for things that you're passionate about, those are all the pros of fame, I suppose. What are some of the costs that came with it for you?
What are the costs? I think I'll say the cost was the curveball questions or things about identity and culture some of the time. I work in Australia, India and Bangladesh. And yeah, I think it's about towing the line sometimes on people sort of ask, well, this recipe isn't from here. People are very possessive about their food.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's not a great cost. I enjoyed the debate. I think the hardest thing, I have to say, I'm fingers crossed, I have been extremely, extremely lucky or unaffected really by whatever negative things that happen in news and media, or I guess the negative aspects of fame.
Yeah.
I think it's just the tried and tested what most people expect.
Yeah.
If there's 30 good comments, there's probably 2 bad ones or weird ones, and then you flush that out. So to be honest, I've not really been very, very affected by bullying or that online sort of space. I think
but you did get a fair bit of that?
I think when I was working in and around sports. So I think when it comes to food and family, no. When it came to sports, I found that there's a very, very different audience for it. There is this very, I'd like to say, testosterone-driven, alcohol-induced support for sports that doesn't come into my regular audience, which is like food and family, and it's actually quite wholesome,
yes.
right? And so, yeah, I think I received some really, like this very objectified comment, and then I sort of wrote a really nice but stern reply to that, and that ended up making huge waves in Bangladesh, and it made huge headlines over there from what I said, because I stay very quiet about these little things. If there are any negative comments, or especially around the idea of, I think it's the idea that you've come onto this public platform, but with any platform, people only see this very one-faceted view of who you are. This is the first time I've ever really spoken in depth about who I was, business or career-wise, before MasterChef. So I think people just have a very small boxed sort of idea of you.
Yeah.
And so when you do something outside that, like talking about living in London, living in Germany, making French pastry or like handmade pasta, I think people sort of were like, oh, tell us about your delicious Bangladeshi food. So that sort of is something you realize about yourself, that people really are only interested in one facet of your life. And that's okay. You sort of grow thick skin around that. I don't know if it feels racist, but it appears to feel that way in the beginning. But yeah, I think I dealt with that very, very quickly, where I went, well, I know there are many, many, many more layers to me than this.
Yeah.
But around sports, it was that objectification. But something really wonderful happened on the back of that. I was harassed by a young doctor, actually, a young male doctor, who made a very nasty comment online. And because I sort of like called that out and wrote this message, what happened is it sort of like toppled down this, it became this snowball effect, and it sort of toppled down something that was an underlying current that I had no idea about. And recently, there has been a lot more, I guess, media and protests around issues surrounding this, where a young female doctor was sexually abused and eventually killed in a hospital in Calcutta. which is part of Bengal. And so that conversation spurred up again about, I guess, not having safety and security for women. So something I advocate for is the security and safety of women in kitchens. In the spaces I work in overseas. So it's about security and safety, like physically, for these otherwise sometimes male-dominated industries, but then also safety online. Yeah. So I think like only good things have happened, but I have to say, I feel very, I feel very lucky that when I do say something or when I do speak up about something, I think there has been a rightful response to it, and it has always had it's a hard thing to go through at the time, but it also always has a bigger repercussion in a positive way and opens up these really difficult conversations.
Well, I'm glad you're talking about it because one of my previous guests, who's an artist, Danielle Weber, she was probably the guest that was the most apprehensive about talking about the cost of her journey, and she went through a whole lot of difficult situations to get to where she is today. But she said she doesn't want to scare off that 8-year-old girl who wants to be like her, you know? And then I thought, we need to contextualize the cost because we can't be scaring people away, but we also need to be talking about it. And the way you've talked about it felt quite empowering. Like things happen. This is how I dealt with it, and this is the good that's come out of that. Which is.
I think sometimes there is a really hard personal cost to it as well. You know, like that time, the days or weeks that you are going through that it means that you have those sleepless nights, you have that sort of anxiety, you have that, why did this happen, or why is there that negativity, why is it aimed towards me? I'm just doing my job. I exist in my own space, and you have your whole life to get on with. Like on the back end of this, I am still raising my children. I am still sort of like having to fly to the next space and cook in the next kitchen or have that, 12-hour day, despite what is happening online. So I have to say that sometimes it's better to ignore things, and sometimes when you just speak out that little bit or enough and say, hey, enough's enough, this is not how it should be. And I was having a conversation with a friend about this, and this is a really, really difficult thing I think that I had to get my head around. I'm really good at just being in my own space and doing my own thing. I didn't have this platform a few years ago, and I led a very, very wonderful life before this happened. So I'm really happy to forgo this platform and continue with whatever comes up next. So I think I've always led my life in a way that things come and go. So in terms of being a public figure or having to, feed into this machine that is social media or be a part of this online world, I believe I can plug out. If that's what it comes to. It's not bigger than my real life. And I'm certainly not, I don't think I'm an influencer or someone who is a content creator where my life depends on this, or my income or my livelihood depends on this. I record the things I do online, but that's about it. So when it comes to bullying online, it then becomes very easy for me to block and delete or ignore this person completely. It's just like, you don't belong on my page, you don't belong in my space and my platform. So it's easy for me to ignore that. The reason to step up sometimes is not usually for myself. Like I was just like, it's so easy to ignore this. It's just a button where you block and delete someone. But until you actually speak about things and sort of, until you actually speak about things, you're not actually changing anything for the next person who faces what you're facing. You're not making any change for the next generation of people who are coming into this space. Yes, it's difficult to take that on. Yes, it's difficult to speak up. But once in a blue moon, I just feel that, hey, if I don't talk about this, this is what I'm leaving behind for my children. This is what I'm leaving behind for the next generation. If I don't sort of like fix this problem in this tiny little way, I'm accepting this behavior, and then the next person has to deal with it.
Yeah.
So there are times where I speak up about this, but yeah, it's because we all have the responsibility to evoke change.
Let's talk about mindset.
Okay.
When on MasterChef, there was a moment, I remember watching this with you, Chen, at home, and then...
I hope this is not when I cut my hand.
It was when you cut your hand. Yeah, so during, you were...
Horrific.
Yeah, you were copying Curtis Stone on the other side of the world, I think, with roast chicken.
Yeah.
And then and the narrative on TV was like, everything was going great, I caught up, and then, boom, I cut my hand. And then blood was flying everywhere. What was so interesting though, I went to rewatch that moment, and after you cut your hand though, like, you looked so calm. Your eyes were like laser focused, like, you know, the nurse was treating your hand and you were probably planning the next 20 steps, you know, like you were so calm and focused. Where did you get that from? Was that something you learned, or can we train that?
Can we train that? I've actually done a whole TED talk on this.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think you can train that. I'm actually reading this book at the moment, and it's called Do Hard Things. I'm only just a few chapters in, but yeah, it is a mindset, I think. And where is that line though between what we get pushed to do, to be tough and to do hard things, and self-care and knowing when to opt out? Sometimes you do hard things and sometimes I do hard things and it's only in retrospect I go, hey, I think that broke me a little bit. So I think I grew up to be pushed a little bit further and harder, and I think that was probably the culture of my times. A little bit, some of it could be cultural, some of it could be growing up in the 80s and 90s, where we were just pushed. I was a Girl Guide as well, and we did treks. Like I did treks as an 11-year-old with a backpack on, where we were just, I don't know, a bit lost in the forest for 3 days.
Wow.
So and it is a mindset. When you think your body's going to give up, or when you think that you can't get over the next hurdle, your mind does get trained to do things that you think that you cannot do.
Yeah.
And MasterChef was probably my greatest adult experience of doing that.
Yeah.
You know, sort of climbing that Everest, doing those 6-hour pressure tests, saying, I'm going to finish this no matter what. And yeah, that day I was watching Curtis Stone on the screen, and I was like watching the screen, and I just pretty much put a cleaver through my nail. And so it had split my nail in half, and the knife had gone through my nail bed where all the nerves are. And it wasn't until in retrospect and after it had all been taped up and I went to the doctors, I think the next day, where I was like, oh my gosh, my whole nail came off. So it was, it was a lot, but in that moment, and I think in that adrenaline and in that pursuit of, I am going to finish this challenge no matter what, I just put everything aside, and I was there to challenge myself. I was there to win. Yeah. And I think not embarrassing yourself on national television plays a huge role in why you get through those challenges. So a little bit of it is ego, a little bit of it is drive. And yeah, I think I was in that phase of my life, I really had that steely mindset. And I don't think I live by that every single day. But when I do go off and do a project, or when we are filming a short series, or when we have really, really long production days, or when you are doing a project that you're completely invested in, I think I'm a little bit like that. It must be a little bit of adult ADHD, where I'm hyper focused, and then I'm also good at being extremely lazy and taking a real break from things. So yeah.
Finding that balance. And I mean, and your MasterChef journey did not stop there. So with a missing nail, which I'm guessing it fell off pretty quickly afterwards, you went through the rest of the competition.
I think I took the bandage off when we were shooting the intros to the finale. That's the first time, because it took a little while to grow back. Yeah. But yeah, I went to Uluru with that bandage, and I think generally throughout the whole series, I was pretty burnt, bruised, and beaten up.
Yeah. Reflects the real kitchen, right?
Yeah.
I remember a moment where Andy asked you, Where have you been? I think it may have been the sardines dish.
Yeah, the
right?
very first.
The very first dish. And where have you been? You got quite emotional. And I've just been at home. What was that moment like?
I think I actually answered that question to myself. I sort of just, I wasn't expecting to. I hadn't said it out loud. And he said, "Where have you been?" And I was like very emotional. We actually had a very long conversation. So what was broadcast was a very, very short version of an otherwise, I think it was like a 45-minute conversation. And we spoke about everything from cricket to, you know, like knowing where Bangladesh is on a map and, you know, growing up and our spices and where my parents sort of used to go find produce back in the 70s. And like, we just had this really, really beautiful long conversation. And then it sort of crescendoed with, they started speaking about my book and things took this real emotional turn.
Yeah.
And I hadn't watched this until, I think the first time I watched the entire thing or that episode was, actually I haven't actually watched that entire episode. I saw snippets of it on social media, but I've watched the finale episode probably earlier this year. So I hadn't watched it ever when it aired because it was so fresh. But I said that to myself, like just at home. And I think part of it was, yeah, there was probably some really repressed part of all of us through COVID and everything that had transpired. That was shot in November 2020. So everything that we had all collectively went through and that year that was, and just what had happened to me that year also was losing family members overseas, being separated from family, but also finding, I don't know, that reason and that voice and letting a lot of wayward things just fall flat and go, hey, what is it that I want to do with my time on this earth? What is it that I want to do with the rest of my life? And that's when I went, hey, I really, really want to write this cookbook and I really want to pass down what my parents had passed down to me. And I think we had reached a really emotional point in our conversation. And he's like, where were you? And I'm like, I was just at home. And I was like sobbing to myself saying that. And it became this really strangely iconic meme, I'd like to say, or tagline, or it just became something that resonated the world over. And I think everyone was feeling that post-COVID.
Yeah. Outside of MasterChef in the kitchen, when you said just at home, it made me feel like areas of my life where perhaps like at home you're a great chef, everybody loves your cooking, but nobody else knows about it.
100%.
And when you said that, it's almost like a public acknowledgement of something that everyone who knows you appreciates, but nobody outside does. And it's like, oh, finally people see me, right?
I found that public validation really, really uncomfortable to deal with. I don't know how, I didn't know how to process it, to be honest.
Yep.
And I found it very difficult. I think it was months before I could sort of acknowledge it. I think accepting compliments and accepting praise is something that is a really uncomfortable space. And can I say, it might be a much more uncomfortable space for women, because we just get along and do it. And we just, I think mums in general, they're like, yep, I just do this and it's unpaid, it's unseen, and I just do this anyway. And no one has ever given me high praise for cooking them a meal. Like, what are you doing to me? Like, this is why MasterChef is so emotional. And I really, really relate to all of those people who are cooking on a daily basis, but like where the labor of cooking really falls onto their shoulders, and that's usually on women's shoulders in most places across the world. To finally receive praise from someone of the likes of like Jock, Mel and Andy on this very international platform is just a very, very hard pill to digest. It feels surreal.
Yeah. I'm going to be a dad soon, real soon. What advice do you give to your children?
I'd say to my children, they are third generation Australians. And for me, what I really, really want them to have is a lot of pride and a surety in their identity and be very self-assured about who they are. Because I think what you do in this world, like your career changes, your interests and your hobbies change, and I think every few years, like every 5 to 10 years, I think we change and we evolve. But what's going to remain like at the core is who you are and if you're a good person and how you make people around you feel. So people will forget the things you say, and people will forget the conversations I've had with you, or, you know, birthday gifts and other material things. But I think the way you make people feel is very important, and I want my children to be very consolidated about who they are, and I want them just to be good people. So that is something I think partly comes with personality, but it is definitely a learnt behaviour. So yeah,
love that.
If there's any advice I give you is just, you know, foster your children and foster good values in your children so that they turn out to be very confident human beings.
And is that what your parents did for you?
I think so. I think so. I think my parents like really fostered us and fostered each of us siblings in a different way and let us be our individual selves, and let us pursue those things that really drive us. There was times where they overrode our decisions, but then there were times where they also supported our decisions. So it's this constant balancing act, but at the very, very base of it, when it comes from a place of love, I think you end up with very, very confident, self-assured people who are willing to give back in the world, whether that's in a creative way or whether it's in their profession or whichever way. It's about giving back and receiving from the world and just living a really good life.
Well, Kishwar, we have a ending tradition on this podcast where the guest leaves a piece of advice, which I then pass on to the next guest. So the advice has been, not less specifically for you, but on the journal, is life is all about choices. You can binge Netflix or MasterChef or try something new. Avoiding conflict is a choice, but so is speaking your truth. Being rich and healthy or lazy is a choice. The toughest choices often lead to the greatest rewards. For me, it's all about creative freedom. Let me ask you, what do you care about? What choices are you making? So that's what she left in the journal. What are your thoughts on that?
That is really, really deep. I think we covered it with the entire conversation we just had. We just spoke about speaking up and ignoring things versus not speaking up at all. And speaking up and addressing issues versus ignoring things. So like choices. I think all along the way, there are these choices that we have. I think some things are in our hands and some things are completely out of our hands, but it's the way we choose to deal with the things that are out of our hands. So the things that we have control over, like binge watching Netflix or getting up and doing something, always like harbor that, try and make good choices for your current self, but your future self. Take care of the person who you're going to be in the future, which means take care of your body, take care of your health, take care of yourself financially, take care of yourself mentally and physically. So always invest in yourself continually. That's one big part of it. But the things that are not in your hands whatsoever, feel the pain or disappointment in those things, but bounce back and let it go. I think the strongest people I have ever met and the strongest contestants on MasterChef are the ones who are able to lose a challenge, dust it off, reset, and enter the very next challenge, which is just as hard, if not harder, and another notch up, with as much gusto and drive than the one before, because that's what life is like. Your challenges are only going to sort of get harder, or more curveballs are going to come your way. Life doesn't get easier. It's who you remain despite the challenges.
Well, Kishwar, thank you so much for coming along today. It's been really nice getting to know the whole you as well, not just who we see on TV and the recipes and the dishes and everything else. I always believe there's so much more to people than just what we see. And as part of this podcast, we do want to get to know the real people, you know, behind their famous stories. And we honour you for everything that you do with your advocacy as well.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for
Louie.
coming.
And like, two things. First of all, congratulations. I think like this is such an exciting time of your life. Like you're about to start a family, so good luck on that journey. And this has been such a real conversation, and I don't think I really shed myself or really speak about the things that are outside food often. And it's just been really, really fun connecting with you.
Thank you so much.